I think applying to jobs is a waste of time. I think spending a lot of time, even worse, on applications, on cover letters, I think even more so or is a waste of time. I think cover letters are basically a waste of time unless they're required. The better focus, and we can delve into it more together, is to have a strategic networking plan.
Before we get started with the show, here's a quick word from our sponsor, Global Training Center. As trade compliance professionals, you want to make sure that your procedures and documentation are completed as correctly as possible to avoid any delays and possible fines. We provide a range of trade compliance courses that will fit your needs. From in-person or web training to recorded on-demand courses, we can train one or even thousands on your team through your learning platform or on our portal. We can even customize a private session for your team. Go to globaltrainingcenter.com to find out more.
Well, we are going to have a great show today. We're going to get to, you guys talk about all the things you have to do. We say, point this out, point that out, do some things as far as learning, getting your training and your skills. But now we're going to get to talk a little bit about some career development, and more specifically, we're going to get into how to navigate into, if you're looking for an open position or promotion or, looking at jobs out there on the market, how do you get through some of these algorithms that are out there or whatever, what the do's and don'ts are. So we got a fellow by the name of Jason Litman that's on. He's a recruiter. And, he and I had a conversation, had a mutual friend that was looking for something, and we talked through some things. And I said, Jason, would you be interested in talking to us a little bit? So we've got Jason on the line now. So Jason, welcome to our show, my friend. It's good to see you for the first time face to face. We've been talking by phone and email. So
Good afternoon, Andy. Good afternoon, Lalo. It's great to be with you both.
Well, thank you, Jason. Well, thanks for joining. The really neat thing is that because we have Jason is going to talk about the recruiting part, yet he's not in the trade world, correct? I mean, it's just recruiting, and we get to see that perspective without having to, how they say that people who take the broker exam and are already in trade fail more than those that are not in trade. I think looking at recruiting and coming into and trying to find a job or strategizing for your next career move, taking out that factor of trade compliance, might help you get into that next job a lot better because you're approaching it and not being too strategic. My wife says I try to do that game Wordle. I'm too strategic. I try to trick it. She says, just do it.
Right.
I haven't even tried that thing. It didn't. It's like, yeah. Anyway.
But anyway, so Jason, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's great. As I said, it's great to be with you both. It's you have a great show. I've had a chance to watch it, and as Andy mentioned, I had a chance to chat with him a little bit when he asked me if I would join you both. I said I would be thrilled to.
Excellent. All right. So, Jason, just in general, as we're talking about it, if I'm looking for a job, I'm going to be like, okay, I got to write my resume. Oh, should I do a cover letter? Do I need to upload that? Should I be looking and I'm scanning Indeed or LinkedIn Jobs or, all the other things out there, and I find something and it's like, okay, I do this application, but I never hear anything. It's like it goes into a black hole and all that. What do I need to do if I'm interested in finding something, or I want to relocate or whatever, and I'm looking at jobs in the area, whatever the case may be? Why does it seem so difficult in today's world to even try and get somebody to talk to you, let alone get an interview?
Yeah, there's a number of factors from my experience, Andy, I think that feed into that. I think the first thing I'd say is myself personally, I worked before I became a recruiter in industry. I was in operations and supply chain. I worked for a few different Fortune 500 companies. So I've been on the side of candidates. I've been on that side of someone who's in seat, either in some case looking for a job, or in other cases as someone who currently had a job and may have been interested in a new opportunity and was at least passively looking. So I've been in that seat. So I can really relate to folks that I talk to, that I advise when it comes to a job search. So there's a couple of thoughts that come to mind most initially. I think a lot of companies would probably hate me for saying this, but I'm going to be honest. I think applying to jobs is a waste of time. I think it's a colossal waste of time, actually. You had mentioned earlier that you described it as the black hole, which is a term I use quite often. I say when folks that I talk to, when you go to apply to a job, your application goes into the black hole, never to be seen again. Oftentimes, your best bet is to get potentially, if you're fortunate, you'll get a rejection. If you're unfortunate, you won't even get a rejection. You'll get ghosted, never to hear from anyone ever again. And that's what happens. It happens, unfortunately, so often when you apply. And the most frustrating thing about it is there could be a role that you are absolutely sure that you are a good fit for. You're reading the job description. This is a role not only could I do, I've done. And it's in my back, or it's in my resume. I have references of all this that could show that. Unfortunately, when you go to apply to the job, there's the application tracking system, ATS, the dreaded ATS, I call it, where if you don't have a certain word in your resume or your application, you'll automatically get rejected. Or if you have the wrong word, you may also automatically get rejected. So for all of those reasons, I think applying to jobs is a waste of time. I think spending a lot of time, even worse, on applications, on cover letters, I think even more so or is a waste of time. I think cover letters are basically a waste of time unless they're required. The better focus, and we can delve into it more together, is to have a strategic networking plan.
Attention all trade geeks. The G-Tech conference is coming to Oklahoma City and you won't want to miss it. Mark your calendars for July 30th through August 1st and join us for a jam-packed event with expert-less sessions and networking opportunities. And guess what? The Simply Trade podcast will be recording live at the event. Don't miss this unique chance to be featured on the show and share your insights with fellow trade professionals. We'll see you in Oklahoma City, where trade compliance takes center stage. Go to www.ncbfaa.org and become part of the action.
And we can talk about some of my thoughts on what that looks like. But I think you need to have a good strategic networking plan as your source to be able to find a job.
So I was going to ask about that, Jason. I was going to ask about that my kids just graduated from college within the last 5 years, and I'm wearing their school colors here. But anyway, so when we were going through that process and they were applying, we did the research and we found that I didn't think that was true, but your resume can be like an SEO, like the pages on your website, and they get hits, and if they get the good hits, then you got a better chance of making the first cut or whatever. I didn't think that was true. So that is true then.
It absolutely is true. And by the way, I just want to say there are people, of course, that apply to jobs and get interviews. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm just saying spending the preponderance of your time doing that instead of having a strategic networking plan is a mistake and a common misstep that people have. And to your point there, Lalo, it is kind of like an SEO page, and there are certain words that are better to have in your resume than others, depending on the role you're applying for. But it almost is like a game. It feels like we've gotten so far away from finding the best talent for a role. It's like we're trying to, as you said, game the system. So it's really an unfortunate process that's out there.
Well, there are algorithms I know that are out there that in the ATS, and when somebody applies, it starts scouring through the application information and your resume information to find certain things. And then based on whatever they set up as far as the hiring company in the algorithm of what to hit, it will rank people, it will reject them, it groups them, whatever. It used to be, you could put in an application and then the networking comes into play, and it's like, all right, your application may get put on top or one of the ones on top, and somebody will look at it and, okay, fine. Hey, take a look at ABC, or John Smith. Here you go. You put it up. In today's world, I think there's two things about it. One, if you're interested, if you know of a job and you're interested, you find it on there. I mean, you've got to put in an application before your network can even come into play necessarily to say, oh yeah, it's already in here. Here's the application number or whatever it is one thing. On the same token, I will say from a personal standpoint that several jobs that I've had within FedEx, after I left FedEx, every single one of the jobs I've had when I wound up going to New York, Houston, Chicago, and even the Boise, Idaho, and then again here in Memphis when I'm project managing a part of a federal grant. That every one of those. So the last 6 jobs I've had have come from personal contacts. Even though I may have applied and done things, they're like, it's personal contact. It's that network you're talking about. So the scenario there is like, so take it from there, Jason. What the heck do I need to do on my networking?
So that's a great question, Andy. And I try to focus on, or I advise folks to focus on spheres of influence and the areas that they have. You mentioned, let's say, folks out of college. Well, what do they have? Depending on the size of their school, they have an alumni association. So there's, your university, if you have graduated from college, I like that, and that's both for newer grads as well as seasoned employees. I also focus on geography. So if you're from a certain city, or if you have something in common with someone, sometimes I speak to folks that are from another country that are here graduating with their master's degrees and trying to get a job, and that's a whole nother layer of complexity. I encourage them to focus on people that might be from their hometown or home country, or a place in their home country if they can find that through their networking. Those are good spheres of influence to have. I also would say one factor I'll put into this that a lot of people, it's kind of right under their thumb, but they miss. And it's whether you're a seasoned employee or not, but let's take it either way. If you're someone that you're networking with, and maybe you don't know someone on LinkedIn, and I'd say I'm extroverted, so I like to network. I naturally do that, and I encourage other people to do that. But I would say that when you're networking with someone, you may say, this person doesn't know me. Why would they reply to me? Well, as I said before, if you have something in common with them, that helps. But one of the reasons they might reply to you if you ask them for some guidance or potentially a referral or potentially to talk for 10 or 15 minutes about the company culture is because if they refer you, many organizations have a referral bonus. And I always like to say that people are nice, people are friendly. You might have something in common with them. You're both from Philadelphia or Memphis or Cal Poly University or whatever it may be. That's great. And they may have that in common. That may be a kicker to get them to want to chat with you. But oftentimes companies offer $1,000, $2,000, $2,500 for a referral. If you refer someone and they get an interview and they end up getting a job, 3 months later, you get a bonus for that. And I remember even when I was younger in my career and I was working at Amazon, I can't tell you, in my spare time, I was trying to refer friends into Amazon to try to get $1,000 bonus. So actually, I went the other way and actually looked for people. So there are folks that will do that, and you're not, in my view, putting too much of a burden on them to ask for some help.
Another thing that I've seen, Jason, is associations. We talk a lot about in this is ICPA, and then we just talked about GTEC. GTEC is a division or a group, an event put on by a group called the NCBFAA. And just next week, there's going to be like a border conference here locally in El Paso. But if you pay close attention, I have seen where they have a special rate for students. Like for $50, you can attend the conference instead of $800, right? I mean, $50 might be too low, but anyway, they might do something like that. I mean, what do you think about that? Like going in there and just going in cold and saying, okay, I know these guys are trade people and I know I want to be in trade. You're going in there cold. Do you think that'll ruin your chances or?
No, I love the idea of networking both, Lalo, if it's an in-person event, or if it's even a virtual event, but an in-person event. Again, I will mention that I'm a little more extroverted, but I love going to those. In fact, someone I was advising, who's getting their master's degrees, asked me about the career fair that was going to be at it's similar to trade association in a sense. You're at the university and there's going to be companies coming. Absolutely, that's a great opportunity to engage with folks, as well as through some of these trade associations.
What about LinkedIn, having a profile there? It's my personal opinion that in today's world, you better have a good profile, even if you're just starting out and whatnot. Take the time, learn how to do it, or get somebody to hire somebody to do it so that you got a good background, good picture. What do you need to do, and all that? But it seems like, without exception, in today's world, you apply for a job, somebody's looking at it, you do a business contact with somebody, potential sales, buy, sell, whatever, it doesn't matter. Somebody's going to check you out on LinkedIn, one of the first avenues. What do you think about that?
So important, Andy, to that point. And as I was thinking about networking and spheres of influence, we talked about education or university or hometown or similar industry or department. As I was saying that, I was almost exclusively thinking about LinkedIn as the tool and the way to do that. Certainly, I think what I would say, it's very important to have an up to date profile, professional photo. That goes a long way. I can tell you that it's just having some of those things can go the extra mile. I know as a recruiter, when I go to someone's LinkedIn, when I'm recruiting someone or emailing with them, one thing I'm gonna pivot to your point, Andy, is check their LinkedIn profile, check them out.
Okay. Well, thinking about it is like on my LinkedIn, I guess I need to pull down my cartoon caricature.
No, I think that's fine. I think my one thing I would say, and Lalo, I think you maybe hit on this too. It's important, be you. Like that's one of my top advice to folks that are looking is like, be yourself. If the company doesn't like you for who you are, it's not a good culture match. It's not the right thing for you. So if that is cartoons or whatever that may be on your profile, it's something that shows your character, and a company is turned off by that, then maybe they weren't the right fit.
Well, all said and done, I mean, I can break the lens on the camera because I look like the south end of a northbound mule. So it's like, all right, the cartoon looks a little bit better. Okay. All right. So let's talk about executive leadership. And, if you're an executive, you're on your way up, maybe you're at a director level and you're trying to get to that next level of VP and above. That's a different ball game. I mean, it's some of the tactics you're still talking about as far as the networking and expanding your network is so important. But what do you suggest for somebody that's looking to move up into an executive role? And then next after that, we'll talk about a little bit somebody that's in an executive role and may be interested in moving to another company.
Yeah, it's a great question. So first, you'd say maybe it's a bit of a shameless plug, but I work for a great company, Capstone Search Advisors, and based in Cleveland. I live in Philadelphia. I work for them remotely, and they do a great job on executive research and top fit 150 in Forbes just recently. So growing. So we do a great job with that, and we work with a lot of folks. To your point, that are maybe at that director level looking to get to VP, or at that VP level looking to senior VP, or in that sort of middle manager looking at director, whatever direction that might be. I think that the top thing that we look for really depends on the company. A lot of times companies want someone that's already been in the role, they've shown they can do it, and I'm talking one for could be for promotion, but also looking for some externally. In those instances, if that type of company is looking for that and they're not going to move on that, then that may not be the best fit for someone who's, let's say, trying to get to director to become a VP. That's may take them out of the game. I think, though, the important piece, and I love giving sports analogies. So you think of, if you're a football fan, you're an offensive coordinator, right? And you're that hot offensive coordinator trying to get promoted to become head coach. It takes a team that isn't going to be focused on just hiring someone that was already just a head coach, right? So certain organizations, you look at in the NFL or NBA or MLB or hockey, whatever, NHL, whatever sport you may choose, that they maybe traditionally just have hired people that already were in role, so to speak, already were head coaches, and anyone else who was never a head coach is out of our search. So if you're someone who's a director trying to get the VP, let's just say, or VP trying to get a senior VP, then those are organizations that you're just not going to have a fit for. You're going to want to find someone in organizations where they do that. Sometimes it's hard to identify that. And that's actually not to plug again, why it's good to have those connections with search firms and relationships with people that know that you're maybe in a job, maybe happy. What we call a passive candidate, meaning you're in a job, it's going well, maybe some growth, maybe not, but if for the right opportunity, particularly promotion, you'd be open to talking.
One of the things that I'm hearing from you is that if you're interested now in trying to find and move up to the next level, one of the things you need to do is reach out to some recruitment firms to, make yourself, let them know that you're available, right?
I think having relationships with the right firms is important, and I say that without naming names. Obviously, I'm biased to Capstone.
And I understand that. And for those that are listening, we are going to have Jason's contact information in our show notes. So it's like, okay, fine, but how do I know? I mean, who's out there as far as a recruitment firm? And how do I make that known? I mean, is this on LinkedIn and I'm like, hey, looking for and I'm available, or what do you do?
Well, so there's a couple things. I mean, first, I would say the first piece of it is across your career, and I will say this for myself as someone who was in industry. I worked as a director of operations, so I was in seat, so to speak. I developed relationships across my career with people, and there were a number of folks that, through my experiences, that I probably wouldn't want to keep in touch with. So it's those people that, as you're in your career, that reach out to you, or that you maybe notice on LinkedIn that you reach out to. Are they people that are going to take the time to talk to you on the phone, speak to you, know what you want to do, ask you about your career, or are they the type that, well, I don't have any open roles right now, so just call me later? And I will tell you, I've met both. That did not want to take the time out, and I won't name names, but they didn't want to take the time out to talk and speak and even get to know me, not necessarily for something right now, but maybe for the future. So some of that, Andy, to be honest, it comes from experience and just, I think, actually trying to meet the right people. I'll tell you that the super large firms, and as I said, Forbes just released the top 150. It's the larger they are, maybe more difficult it is to really have a personal relationship with those recruiters and people that are, of course, business wanting to grow and expand, but also taking the time out to get to know you and what you want to do and where you want to live and what you want to do, what your compensation requirements are. And those are things I know that myself as a recruiter, I try to do. And I would encourage folks that are looking to try to make those relationships with folks. Again, there are lists out there. You can see them. You can then go to LinkedIn and try to find people that work at those firms, try to connect with them. I'll tell you that some of them might be looking to develop a relationship. Others maybe just looking to make a buck.
Okay. All right. So that's a key, folks. That's a key takeaway, is that think of it ahead of time, prepare for your discussion with your recruiter so that you know what you want to do. All right. So moving into that role, all right, and this is moving up through there. What about your resume? As you've got to have something, something for you to look at. Is there any do's and don'ts on a resume?
Yeah, sure, certainly. There's probably a number. And I can tell you that I look at resumes all the time myself, creating them, helping people with them, reviewing them. So it's something I do quite extensively. There's a couple things I would say that sort of stand out to me. First, let me just say, resumes are looked at really quickly. Like if you're applying to a job or submitting your resume or to a recruiter, it is not something that we're going to spend an hour on or 30 minutes on. 5 to 10 minutes, and 10 minutes is long. I'll be honest with you, and I really mean that. And particularly someone who, like myself, or someone at an organization that's trained on how to read a resume and look for a resume, they're going to read it quickly. So with that being said, depending on where you are in your career, I don't recommend having a 4, 5, 6 page resume.
What about being graphical on the my kids are apparently they accredit their jobs because they made a graph. They're both computer engineers, so they both made a graph, 2 graphs, one for their personal, one their professional. The professional one said, I know Java, I know Python, React, and all the languages that they knew, and they graphically said on a bar on a 1 to 5 how skilled they are. And apparently that accredited as to how quickly somebody called them back, because they quickly saw their skills. And then on the personal side, like they did another graphic. I thought that was funny, but like my son put that, whatever. He was a Eagle Scout. He likes hiking. He likes, he likes cycling. He's a triathlete, etc. And apparently that helped as well. He put a bunch of icons of that, and like, does the personal stuff help? And do these graphical things help? Are you gonna get someone old school and say, what the heck is this? I just want to know what they do.
It's a good question, Lalo. A couple things. I think it depends on the industry you're in. So I think you mentioned that your son, I believe you said,
my son and daughter both.
Son and daughter are computer engineers. So
Right.
I've helped people that are computer engineers get jobs and have those conversations. That might be a little bit more common in that industry. And if that were the case, then I think it's fine. I also would say that be yourself. We talked about that earlier. So if they want to mention some things about them personally, that's good. Depending on how much experience they have, if they're new out of school, I think focusing on personal, like you mentioned, Eagle Scout and that kind of stuff, it may show some leadership. Those are good things to show. I always say for engineers or people that are computer scientists that are technical, is to try to show actually a little bit more of that leadership and try to show that you're more than just Java or just more than just certain programs you know how to do, because every person is showing those programs. What can you do to differentiate yourself? So I think that what you shared may have differentiated them and may have shown some of their own leadership or their own style, so to speak.
Well, and to that point, I think Lila, I think they came up with a very good thing, is that showing the proficiency. I know that there's folks that as they're looking for some IT experience, if you will, of people, and in that very thing. I mean, I've literally been talking to several CIOs of recent on a project, and one's looking for, let's say Python, the other one's looking for some older C++ or whatever, and it's like that proficiency level highlighting it may be the very thing that gets them right through the door. So that's a good to your kids there.
Yeah, I think it's a good tidbit that they did. I would counter that also with some of the folks that may be watching the show. Again, there might be some computer engineers that are watching and are recent out of school, but some of the people that are more in the trade, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, might be a little careful about some of the graphs and focusing a little too much on the personal. It just depends on the organization. It depends on the type of roles. Some of those things you want to be mindful of.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me shift gears on you. Now let's talk about executives that are in the current executive leadership roles. I mean, moving from a VP to a senior VP or to COO or CEO or CFO or the C-suite and all those things. That kind of recruitment is going to be interesting. I'm going to get. It'll be interesting in your comments on that, but also from a resume perspective, would you suggest that somebody change their resume from at that executive level from a chronological to more of a skills and proficiency and experience capabilities or whatever?
I've seen, so it's a great question, Andy. I've seen both. In fact, I talked to a COO of a $1 billion company recently that recently left the firm, took some time off, looking for a new opportunity. I talked to another person who was a COO of a mid-sized bank in the Philadelphia area recently and reviewed their resumes. And one of the gentlemen that I spoke to had like an adjoining document where they talked about like skills and accomplishments, which I liked. I would probably like to have seen that just in one document personally, where the first page might be skills and accomplishments. I still like chronological. I still like that to me, that resume most recent to what you've done. I say at least go back 10 years.
You've talked about network. We really haven't gotten into the actual network of your contacts yet. And at that level, I would think that would be an extremely important thing. But how do you let people know that you're interested in moving without cutting your own throat at where you're at?
You have to be careful with some of that. There is a way on LinkedIn that you can put that your case. So there's open to work, which we've all probably seen, where it's like you have the picture with the green. There's also a way you can privately put that you're open to work, and I know that because I'm a recruiter and some folks do that. I can tell you, as an individual, used to be in industry, I would still be a little bit cautious about some of that. And I say that as someone who just there are ways that LinkedIn has algorithms where they would sort of quote unquote block your own company from seeing that. Again, if you're public about it, you're public about it. And believe it or not, I've seen people that work at a company that have done that, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend. But anyway, you can privately put that you're open to work, and recruiters can see that. There's a private way of doing it, and you can navigate that. That's one thing. I think this is also why it's important to have those relationships with folks, the right folks that are in industry. My firm, Capstone Search Advisors, we do executive recruiting, including C-suites, every level you can imagine that are exempt leadership. And it's important to have those relationships with folks that, in the event you are looking, in the event that you are open, that there's someone that you can go to and talk to and see what's out there to get a feel for the market. It's important to have those relationships and contacts. And it's also important, I think, in industry to have those contacts of folks and know when they go to another company and keep in touch with them and that kind of stuff. Those things go a long way. And I'll anecdotally share with you that someone I work with very closely, he helped someone get a job a number of years ago, and they stayed in touch. And when this individual was laid off, was looking for a job, he went and reached out to someone that I work with and was able to help him find a next career opportunity. So having those relationships with the right people is super important.
Well, I will say that something that has happened as far as with me recently too, as far as I've had more than one, I've had actually several recruiters that are reaching out to me to consider becoming a board member of corporations. And in that recruitment process is actually even a little bit different. And actually some proposals that I'm, considering. But in that, any advice to people that may be interested? Yeah, I want to become a board member or whatever, and look at that.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and sometimes there could be certain firms that specialize in that type of recruitment. I would say that for individuals doing that, it's super important that if you're going to become a board member, you understand the terms, the company culture, much like I think you would if you're joining any other company yourself. But it's important that it's something that aligns with what you want to do, because depending on the level of the organization, there's a good chance you're going to be right there on their company website. You're going to be really tied into to what they do. And some folks, in fact, I was looking. There's a gentleman I recently connected with who was a CEO of a rather large company at one point. He's the board of a nonprofit. And those are things that folks like to do their careers. I would say it's not the easiest thing to get on a board, depending on the size, and it sometimes depends on, do you know someone there and what your relationships are, and it's a little bit of a unique process.
Well, I could keep talking and pelt you with more questions, but I think we need to try and wrap this one up. We may create some additional shows, but with that, any I guess, top three things you would say, it's based on what we've talked about, what would you say would be the most crucial for us, takeaways?
Yeah, I would say number one, be very hesitant about spending a lot of time applying to jobs. As I mentioned, the black hole, I would be very careful about doing that, and look at other strategies. With that, I would say focus on networking. We talked about some of those key areas. Andy and Lalo, whether that be university, industry, company, hometown, other trade shows we talked about, and professional alliances, those sorts of things. Focus on those spheres of influence. And then finally, I would say it's super important to know what you want to do and be confident in that, where you want to be from a compensation perspective, you want to be geographically, what you want to do next. It's okay to not know. I would say when you're talking to a recruiter, try to be in a situation where you're able to say that, because we talk about Jerry Maguire, help me help you, right? The famous line from that great movie. Well, for a recruiter to help you, they need to understand what you want to go. So fourth, and my bonus would be link up with a great recruiting firm, Capstone Search Advisors. There's a lot of people that will want to talk to you about what you want to do in your career.
Okay. All right. Jason, I think this was a good show. Hopefully folks will like this and listen to it. This is going to be a show that you probably need to download and listen to several times based on what we've talked about. If you have some questions, again, Jason's contact information will be added to this, but all that. And I will say that greatly appreciate our listenership. Please like us, subscribe to us. Give us some comments, give us some feedback, but thank you for being listeners of Simply Trade. But Lalo, anything you want to close us out with?
No, other than thanking Jason for coming on, and I really appreciate it. It was very informative. I really like that. We actually have people that have come to us like at trade shows and say, "Hey, I listened to your show," and the ones they mention a lot are the career development ones. They're like, that was good career advice. Thank you very much. So this really falls into that. So thank you for all that information. So I'm sure some people are going to like this.
Yes, thank you very much for the time and opportunity, and looking forward to chatting with everyone soon.
With that, folks, we hope you have a great day. And again, thank you for being listeners with us.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. You should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.